On the page where you practice writing your name in bubble lettering or the old school style graffiti letters, you're going to practice coloring it in. We're going to use some of those blending techniques that we practiced last time and applying it to our letters. So a lot of graffiti lettering, they actually do this gradient from one color to another. Sometimes, most often, it's from a value to another value. So it might be like a dark blue to a light blue or a dark green to a light green. So that's what I'm going to do here for this first set of letters. I'm going to do a dark value at the bottom and a light value at the top. So we're going to use multiple layers of the colored pencil and just kind of build up that color slowly. The more layers you have, the more wax and pigment, the easier it will be to blend, and it's going to look really, really pretty. So I'm using some medium to light pressure here at the bottom, and I gradually lighten up the pressure as I move upwards. Notice like on the outside of the letters, I'm going to go vertical and I'm going to follow the shape. At the bottom, I'm mostly horizontal. Now, when you are overlapping and going different directions, if it's done correctly, it's going to look really nice because you're actually getting into all of the gaps between the colors. Now, I'm going to layer with another blue. So I used a dark blue for that first layer. You want to put the darker color on the bottom, your mid-tone in the middle, and your lightest value on top. So I went from a dark blue to a light blue, medium to heavy pressure, and I gradually lighten as I move upwards. And I'm using kind of circular strokes just like I did in the practice. They're very, very close together and overlapping a lot so that it smooths out and blends out a little bit better. So I'm going to do this with all of my letters, really, really light pressure here at the top, and then heavier pressure as I move to the bottom. Again, covering those edges very, very carefully. Alright, speed this up. So this does take a lot of time, and as you're adding a lot of heavy pressure, you're going to need to stretch your hand, stretch those muscles, don't let them cramp up. And white over top. So I'm blending out with white and just kind of lightening things a little bit, but it'll also just help move that pigment and wax around where it gets nice and smooth. Now I'm going to use this same technique here, so I'm going to leave this sped up. The only thing is with the S, I want to make sure that I can actually see the whole shape, so I'm being very mindful of where I have my highlights and where I have my shadows, as different parts of that S are touching each other. Now, I'm going to use some Prisma pencils for the bottom, and we're going to use another technique that a lot of graffiti artists use, where it almost has like a chrome finish. We have a highlight and a shadow across the middle. So like I said earlier, we start with the darkest value. This one happens to be black. And I'm going to very, very lightly, extremely lightly, sketch in the shape. So I want this highlight and shadow to move. So it's going to have a curve. Now I'm going to shade in with my dark blue first before I do a layer of black. Now my darkest area is going to be along the bottom side of this line, and then I'm going to fade out at the bottom to a lighter blue. With the Prismas, you can really build up a lot of layers of color and wax. So I'm going to get a layer of the dark blue first, kind of get the idea of the shading that I want on the bottom half of my letter. Now I'm going to go back in with the black and shade in. Black, when you're shading really lightly, is how you get gray. Gray is typically going to be a mid-tone for black and white. It's right in the middle. So I'm going really, really lightly over top of my dark blue. I'm following the same direction that I did with the blue. Now I'm going to go back over top with the blue again. I'm going to be doing this several times to slowly build up the color. This is going to be the part where I can start to go vertical instead of horizontal, and same small tight circles to make sure that everything is getting smoothed out evenly. Make sure that you're keeping your pencils sharp. If your pencil gets low enough where it's down to the wood, that wood is going to scratch and carve into your paper, and then you won't be able to fill in those gaps. You'll have little white spots. So keep them sharp. Now I want to darken this up a little bit more so I have really nice contrast between the top and the bottom half of my letters. So I'm going back in with the top. There we go. Get that blue in there. So this is my dark blue again. This is probably my last layer of the dark blue. It's looking really good. I've got some really nice contrast. And now the white. So the white, I'm going to start at the bottom first and get that light value, and I'm not going to bring it into the black. I'm just going to use that white around the edges and bring it up into the blue until I get that nice gradient fade that I want. And then I can go back with the light blue if I have one and just touch it up a little bit, smooth it out even more if I need to. Okay, next we're going to work on the top. So the top is going to have a gradient fade just like the bottom, only not as dynamic. So I'm going to have a darker section at the top, but it's still going to be very light compared to the bottom half. And it's going to fade to white before we get to the darkest part of the bottom half. That way we have that nice high contrast, and it's going to give it that cool kind of metallic shiny look. So very tight circles with my colored pencil, really light pressure as I get closer to that middle line. Really light pressure. Now the thing with the Prisma is, in any colored pencil, you build up the colors. So you're going to layer and layer and layer your blues until you get the color that you want. Now the white is going to be the last thing that I do, and I'm just using it to blend everything together, lighten it up, crisp some of those edges. It smooths everything out. Now I'm going back with that medium blue on the bottom half, and I'm going to crisp up some of those edges, redefine them, blend some stuff out a little bit more. And now that I have that, I'm going to outline this. Really, I'll outline everything eventually, but just to give it that completed look, I found a color that has really nice high contrast, and done.